For a movie that works very hard to keep the identity of the bad guy secret for a third of the story, the trailer for Netflix's Carry On sure does a great job of giving it away right from the start. A young TSA agent fights to outsmart a mysterious traveler who blackmails him into letting a dangerous package slip onto a Christmas Eve flight. Taron Egerton is the TSA agent who is having the worst holiday ever. Egerton is believable as the guy who's unwillingly become a pawn in a terrorist plan. Adding to the cast is Danielle Deadwyler, Logan Marshall-Green, Theo Rossi, Norris, and Sofia Carson. Well, you know what, there is one more, but I'm not going to spoil it on the off chance that you haven't seen the trailer yet. The setup is a little routine, and even borrows some sequences from movies like Die Hard 2 and Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. But thankfully, that doesn't take away from a lot of the thrills or even suspense. But even with the tension, to become fully engaged, you're gonna have to suspend some disbelief and just go with the conveniences that the plot affords. Egerton is great, especially as he's pushed right to the brink. But it's also a little difficult to buy how many suspicious things he does and how his behavior continues to devolve, which should cast a lot of doubt by his coworkers, but it doesn't. I mean, he starts off cocky and bubbly, then becomes more cagey as the day progresses. He is convincing, though, with his increasing jitters and the drive to be the hero. We're given enough background development through conversations so that the info, first off, doesn't seem forced or unnaturally delivered, but then it also provides the backing to make his decisions logical, as well as creating a believable scenario for his athletic ability that we see take place later in the story. I mean, yeah, the situation as a whole, it's a bit far-fetched, but at least it's not wildly ridiculous. Danielle Deadwyler is also great in this as an intuitive and observant LAPD detective. She's grumpy, but that adds to her effectiveness in pursuing the leads. And I love how no-nonsense she is, quick-witted, but also not quick to believe others. She doesn't have much of a dynamic with Egerton, but when they do interact, the exchanges are tense. Now, everyone else is pretty much a stranger to us, which for the villains, that's a good thing. By being mysterious, even undefined, we can never be sure of who all is involved. And the camera does an excellent job of pausing on people to create suspicions, not all of which are actually true. But we're also given enough glimpses into characters to inform us of the skills of certain people, creating credibility without having to fully build out people that we don't need the info on. And despite the many plot conveniences that are introduced, there's still a good amount of anxiety produced thanks to the high-stakes situations and the ruthlessness of the bad guys. I mean, they show zero regard for life, willing to take anyone out to further their plan. And because of that cruelty, their actions keep the story engaging and moving. And it's really not about their motives either. We're eventually let in on the nefarious goal, but what makes this work is the predator playing with its prey, controlling the situations through knowledge and threats. And the writing keeps the dialogue quick and condensed. We don't get long breaks of exposition or meandering character arcs. The scenario, it's set, and then the actions are dictated, and if not carried out, lives end. Now, I appreciate, too, that because the baddies are so callous, many of the characters are always in peril. It's hard to determine who will be spared because some shocking moments occur that fit perfectly within the scenario, but they aren't expected in terms of outcomes. That being said, though, the conclusion of the film is pretty obvious, and it plays out almost exactly as you might think. But when I think to a film like Die Hard 2, the ending is pretty obvious, but it's still satisfying because it's what I'm rooting for the entire time. I mean, it's the same here. A lot of confusion and complications take place. People are forced and manipulated into doing someone else's bidding, and then loss of life is a real outcome. But there's still the underdog hero that we have to root for, hoping that he's going to overcome the incredible, sometimes outrageous situations to save the day. Now, there's a good balance of dramatic tension and action, keeping the momentum of the storytelling high, but also not being an all-out action thriller. And this does help to keep the story somewhat grounded, especially given the locale of LAX on Christmas Eve. You got a ton of passengers where chaos could erupt at just about any moment and become a stampede, which would be terrifying and exciting, but would also break the personal tension that exists for Egerton. Now, most of the action sequences are standard and they don't involve a bunch of fighting, instead utilizing chases to build the energy. But there is an awesome close quarters fight that we are treated to that is a continuous take. I mean, it is violent, exciting, and incredibly immersive. It's not an overly long sequence, but it's still very effective. The way the camera revolves and rotates in the cramped space is fluid and creates a scenario where we can feel as if we're right there with the actors, thankfully not having to experience the extreme danger that they're facing. Now, the movie is very close to being 2 hours long, but I didn't get bored with this or even felt like it was dragging. There are repeated setups where Egerton has to complete a task or allow something to occur while he also tries to thwart the baddies, only then to have to do it again a bit later thanks to new complexities. And I didn't mind this, and it didn't feel overdone, even drawn out. Each scenario is working us closer to the conclusion, efficiently and then naturally. Now, the director for this, I'm not going to slaughter the pronunciation of his name, but he's got several decent tense films under his belt, like Run All Night, The Shallows, Black Adam, and Orphan. Now, I know these aren't all perfect films, but they do create apprehension through the storytelling, and that's also what's delivered here. Carry On is a suspenseful, anxious, and taut action thriller, led by a captivating and believable performance from Taron Egerton. While the story isn't unique and many plot conveniences are built in, the storytelling is efficient and moving, allowing the characters to flow through the arc skillfully, but not without complexities. The supporting cast works to enhance the drama, while immersive action sequences create gripping and nail-biting scenarios. This is way more of a fun ride than expected, and is an entertaining and engaging watch to escape from the real world for a couple of hours. Plus, it's going to make you glad you're not spending your hours at the airport. There's no sex or nudity, a lot of profanity, and some brutal violence. I give Carry On 4 out of 5 couches. So what movies are you looking forward to seeing in the coming weeks? I'd love to know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.